is. Just been friends for, I guess we're cousins too, but that doesn't really factor into why we're friends. We've just been friends for a whole lot of years, so it's good to see them. Start in Genesis 45, Genesis chapter 45, verses 25 through 28. Genesis 45, 26 through 28. 25 through 28. It says, And they went out of Egypt and came unto the land of Canaan unto Jacob their father, and told him, saying, Joseph is yet alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart fainted, for he believed them not. And they told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said unto them. And when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob revived. And Israel said, It is enough. Joseph, my son, is yet alive, and I will go see him before I die. Then let's go to Isaiah 40. 28 to 31, it says, Hast thou not known, hast thou not heard that the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, neither is weary? Is there no searching of his understanding? He giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increaseth strength. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. You know, as I was kind of reading and preparing, I was just thinking, in today's world, life really weighs on all of us. Just seems like we're stretched on every side. It's not, your money doesn't go very far anymore. There's always some health problem with somebody, you know. It seems somebody's getting diagnosed with cancer nowadays, or somebody had a stroke. It seems like everywhere you turn, and I don't know if most people at their job, you get more or more is asked of you than maybe what was before. It's maybe a little bit more demanding than what it has been. It just seems everywhere. It's just we're all stretched. At least I feel stretched. I'm sure most of y'all do too. And that comes along with that feeling stretched is you just get tired. You get weary. You get worn down. You get to where when you get off of work or when you have a weekend, you don't want to do anything. You just want to be alone almost, which that's not a great place to be. But I'm sure we've all been there where we want to be left alone. Can I be honest? We don't want to go to church. We just want to stay at home, and we don't want people to mess with us. But that's not where we need to be at all the time. But we've all been there, right? I have been there where I don't want to go to church. I don't want to see my family. I just want to be left alone because I'm exhausted mentally, physically, spiritually, everything. I'm just exhausted. And I don't want to be around anybody. I don't want to hear it, but I go to church still. Not because I want to be there, because I went there because it's my duty. And if there's anybody here today that's here just because it's their duty, I want to thank you for coming. That, I've been there, that I didn't feel like going, but I came because I knew that's what I was supposed to do. And if you'll just keep doing that, if you'll just push through the mud, if you'll just drag yourself to church however you can, you will get help. It may not feel like it and it may not seem like it, but just keep pushing yourself because today may be your day or the next day may be your day. Whatever it is, don't be so focused on your problem that you lose sight of your vision of what God has planned for you. I used to be, and I guess I still am, but I used to look at it more, but just military history, I used to love to read about it. Well, there was a soldier, and he actually became super popular because of this, and he wrote a book, and I think they made a movie about it. But he was up on a mountain, and this was in Afghanistan, and they got attacked or whatever, and they all died except him. But he didn't know this at the time. He just knew he got He was standing there with the last guy he knew was alive, and a missile hit right by him and just sent him flying. And he broke both of his legs, broke his jaw, bit his tongue in half, and he had been shot like 13 times. I mean, it was ridiculous what the guy had went through. He couldn't hardly move, but he was laying there, and he thought, I'm just going to die here if I don't do something. So instead of just laying there and dying, there was a stick beside him. He didn't have his gun. There was a stick beside him, and he just drew a line above him where he knew he needed to kind of head towards. And he said, if I reach that line, I'm going to draw another line, and I'll just crawl to it. So he reached that first line, and he drew another line and crawled to it and drew another line. And he did that for 3 miles until he finally made his way to just some village. He wasn't really planning to go to the village. He didn't know where it was. He just knew that he had to get away from where he was. And he ended up finding a little village in a valley there. And anyway, a message got out, and they come and rescue the guy. But, you know, if he had just decided, you know, I'm bruised and I'm battered and I'm defeated, and I'm just going to, this is it, you know, I'm just going to die here, and this will just be the last chapter of my story. But he decided in himself that, you know, if I can live to this point, that's where I'm going to get to. He didn't worry about, oh, how am I going to get patched up? What are they going to do for me? You know, am I going to get my mortgage taken care of this month? That's not what he was worried about. He was worried about his situation right then. He just said, you know, if I can just make it to here, that'll be fine with me. And then if I can make it to here, and could you imagine doing that for 3 miles with 2 broken legs, being shot up, bit your tongue in half? I mean, it's unimaginable what he was able to do just because he decided he wasn't going to quit. And in our Christian walk, even though we're tired and we're bruised and we're weary, we can't just give up and just decide that this is it, you know, this is the end of my story. We have to push on for ourselves. We have to push on for our loved ones. We have to push on for Christ, and we have to push on for ourselves, because if we say, you know what, this ain't working out, what good have we done for ourselves? We've done ourselves a disservice. We've done our family members a disservice, and we've done Christ a disservice, because we're supposed to be reaching souls for the kingdom of God. And if we just die in those dry times, because we've all been in dry times, we've all had those moments to where we just feel like giving up. But we can't allow ourselves to do that. That's like the man at the pool of Bethesda. He laid there for 30 years. And, you know, we criticize him for not doing anything in those 30 years. And he may be due a little bit of criticism. But thank God he was there for 30 years. Because when Christ did come by, he got his healing. And had he not have been faithful, again, you can criticize him if you want to, and I have. But had he not have been faithful to that spot, he would have never got his healing. Now, could he have got it quicker? Sure. But we have to remember to be faithful, even in those times where it seems like nothing's going right, and it seems like maybe we're all alone, or maybe we want to be left all alone. You know, Jacob, he had thought Joseph had died, and we all know that Joseph was, you know, that was his favorite. But Joseph was a promise to Jacob. You know, he was going to be a promise. That was the way Jacob looked at it. That was a 12th of his nation taken off, because, you know, he was told he'd have sons and be rulers over nations. But whenever he saw those wagons, and I'm sure they may have been colorful or something, there was something that told him that that's Joseph. You know, that he knew in his mind that was his son that God had promised him. And he realized right then that, you know, that's Joseph and he's alive. But he had given up hope on the situation. I mean, you can tell by, you know, how he reacted there, that he had no hope of ever seeing his son again. But when he saw those wagons, his spirit revived in him, because he realized that when God promises you something, God is never going to not fulfill that promise. When there's a promise made between us and God, we're the only ones that don't ever keep our end. You know, and I'm not saying we don't ever keep our end, but if there's ever a broken promise in that relationship, it's us. It's not God. And I read there in Isaiah that's not telling us to just not do anything. You know, when we're Christians, we don't necessarily get tired of church. We don't get tired of God, but we get tired working for God. Does that make sense? You know, when you're at work, you get tired working and you're just weary. You're tired, you're ready for a break. And it can be the same thing in our Christian walk. We don't get tired of Christ, but sometimes we get tired of the work. We get weary. Not saying we don't like it or we don't love it, we don't love Him, but there's sometimes we just need Christ to come and just renew our strength. And how do we renew our strength? Well, it tells us right here that we have to wait on the Lord, and that's just keep serving Him. That's not sit there and wait and twiddle your thumbs and wait for God to do something for you. That is to continue to serve Him and to do what you can, just like with that. Never mind. That's not going to make much sense. So I don't want to go down that rabbit trail. God will never give us more than we can handle in our life. He will never put more on us than what we cannot fathom, what we cannot carry. Even though it may feel like it, He will never, ever do that to us. And I used to enjoy working out whenever I was younger, and I didn't start off lifting a whole lot, and compared to most people, when I quit, I wasn't lifting a whole lot. You know, there's some people that's their whole life, and they end up lifting just a crazy amount of weight. But, you know, it's easy when we first get started in this to see these great men of God or great women of God, whoever it is, and you think, man, how do I ever get to that? How do I ever get to that level to be that kind of person? Well, it didn't happen for them overnight. The same way that, you know, when you're working out your physical muscles, that doesn't happen overnight. You don't start with 100 pounds and then the next day you're lifting 400 pounds. It takes time. It takes repetition, and it takes being faithful to doing that every day. And it's the same way. All these men and women that we look up to, people like Brother Larry, Sister Debbie, Sister Betty, it didn't happen overnight. It was faithful. Even when there were times I'm sure they didn't feel like it, they were still faithful. And guess what? Those times when you don't feel like it, they pass. You get revived in those dry times to where, you know, you're back up on the mountain. But it just takes being faithful and pushing through those dry times and pushing through those areas of I guess discomfort, of loneliness, of weariness, of I guess a little bit of selfishness, but just pushing through those and realizing that God has great things for us, but we have to be able to push through all that. If somebody could come to the piano, that's about all. I'm not going to be very long-winded this morning, or probably tonight, unless Brother Shane wants to do tonight. But it's so important that when we get in those dry times, that we don't throw in the towel. We don't just decide that this is where my story ends, that we continue to be faithful, even, and I'm not saying do this for the rest of your life, but even if you come to church out of duty and you don't feel like it, just come to church out of duty. Because odds are, if you can get yourself here, something will happen for you. Nothing will ever happen if you miss it. If you miss church, if you're needing something from God, and you just decide, well, I'm not going to go, I don't feel like it, you'll never get what you need. But if you're faithful to come, odds are something will happen for you. But you got to be here. I know God can move where you're at, but we also know the importance of coming to church, and I believe if you're a Christian, this is just my personal belief. I'm not saying there's Bible behind this, maybe there is, but if you know you ought to be in church and you don't feel like it and you skip out, why would God want to lift you out of that? What have you done to prove that you're faithful to Him at all? So I believe when we're in those dry times, we ought to be here, because this is where things happen for children of God. This is where God gives us strength. This is where God gives us that lift to keep going. If we could all come find a place to pray.
struggles and trials that are in your way. I prayed for strength, but all you feel is pain. Your faith is failing, you don't know the way, but God is there. You can hear Him say, you can make it. He's gonna work it